KFIZ News Time 8:12. We welcome you to this week's edition of Landscape Smart, brought to you by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company. And joining us, as always, the inimitable Ron Rademann. I have to come up with a new adjective for you.
I was going to say, I think I'm going to have to, look that up and figure out what that word really means because I don't know what you say about me each Saturday morning.
I'll do some digging, and we'll have other words for you, my friend.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have other words for me.
Also joining us, Master Gardener Patty. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning.
And it's, for those of you who are old enough to remember the old Mickey Mouse Club, one of their days was Guest Star Day. Well, this happens to be Landscape Smart's Guest Star Day. Ron, I'll turn it over to you.
So, yeah, I've invited Luke Roffers in this morning to be on the show. He's been a longtime customer of...
He's not that old.
Yeah, well, Luke started...
Still gray hair.
He started, at about 16, just like I did. And so he's got, even though he's young, he's still got 10 or 15 years of experience in already. He'll tell you a little bit more about that too. But Luke has been a very loyal customer of Rademann's. And he does, I'll let him talk a little bit more about it too, but leading into it, he buys a lot of our different stone products from us, does a lot of retaining walls, outdoor patios, and also does lawn and lawn care maintenance and mowing, and plants trees and shrubs, does edging and shrub work, things like that. So pretty much, anything around your home and yard. So anyway, Luke.
Hey, Ron, how's it going?
So, everything's, so, if you have any specific questions on landscaping, Luke or I will take care of them together here today. So let's just tell, what year did you start, Luke, and things like that? Just give us a little history of, and why did you decide to get into landscaping of all things?
All right, so I believe it was 2013 or 2014 when we officially started. My grandpa started a concrete company back in the 70s, and he owned a bunch of farms, so I was kind of always around the landscaping. Farming's pretty much like a rougher version of landscaping. You kind of learn the same type of things,
Well, you're working with soil and you're working with plants and you're working with living.
Hopping in a skid loader,
Right.
Get firewood.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of learned a lot of it back on the farms. But then I was actually going to school to be a firefighter here at the tech school.
Now, there's quite a difference between A and B here.
Yeah. So I went back to what I knew how to do to make money while I was in school, and it ended up turning into a business, and I didn't sign up for school the next year.
And here you are.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of, how a lot of, you just kind of jump into things accidentally. You start even when Rademann's, we were in this, in the stone business way before with my grandfather. And
the Stone Age.
Yeah, back
Flintstones.
It really was. I mean, it started in the 40s and, in 50s. But then my father actually started, mowing grass. And then we started doing, outdoor retaining walls and flagstone patios, because that's how I got into.
That's kind of how you build up everyone's trust and stuff too, doing the smaller stuff. And
yeah, and so it's kind of a similar story in a way, just a couple generations later. So,
good things don't change over time.
So no, and that's it's just how businesses evolve too. And you start out thinking, firefighting, you don't know, when you're 16, 17, 18, 19, I was always a numbers guy. I thought I was going to be a CPA, and I did not do well in biology and some of those, the classes like that. And it's interesting now how and then you have to learn, understand Latin because of botanical families and things like that. And, and I had a hard enough time trying to understand English, let alone Latin.
That stuff still confuses me a little bit.
Well, and you learn a little bit you never stop learning. Well, I learned something every Saturday. It seems like doing the radio show too, so.
And that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Just a reminder, the lines are open, 923-1450, 1-888-900-1450. You can email your questions to kfizstudio@gmail.com. We will get them that way and get your question on the air and get an answer for you. And speaking of which, it looks like we have one here from Scott, if we can proceed with it.
Sure.
All righty. It says, "Hi, folks."
Hi.
Hi, Scott. Anyhow, let's see. Sent our smoke bush picture a month ago and asked about the dark spots. Well, it's a month later and no change. They got another picture, did a scratch test, and gotta open the thing up here. And it appears to be green under the outside. And let me get the picture up here for you. And there is the picture for you to look at. Because I look at it and say, yep, that's a picture.
It doesn't look very alive.
It looks like someone was chewing on the bottom of it, maybe.
Yeah, it looks like there could be some like varmint damage down at the base, either rabbits or mice or something like that. And of course, if there was damage down there, then, that's impeding the flow of sap up through to the branches. So then you're not going to be able to push out new leaves. The other problem with smoke bush, is they're a little borderline hardy. And we saw quite a few scattered problems this year, primarily with evergreens, but it's showing up in some of the perennial grasses and things like that too. We just, without any snow cover, and even like roses. I was at a friend's house earlier this week, and they had like knockout roses, and they had been there for like 10 years, and they have about, a dozen of them, and they lost it more than half. So we're seeing some scattered problems with some of these, knockout roses are a zone 4 plant.
Yeah.
And even these smoke bushes are zone 4, they should be fine. But it seems like some years on smoke bushes they'll tip die back a little bit, but they won't die out completely.
Well, we had a triple threat this winter though. We had the lack of snow cover and drought. And then it got cold really fast when it got cold in, January was that? A really fast cold spell. They didn't have time to get acclimated to the cold, and we had no snow, and it was dry.
Well, and I think part of it was everything got off to a bad start going into winter because it was a little bit of a false sense of security for everybody. It took everybody a little bit by surprise because it was rather wet in May and June and July, and then all of a sudden it got to the end of July and then it just stopped. And we got a few sprinkles and a few showers, but we didn't really get any good rain. So, August and September and October were quite dry, and it put a lot of evergreens and people weren't really thinking, because it was so wet earlier in the year, they weren't thinking at all that you needed to water. And so, that was part of the problem. And then, so you put plants under a little bit of stress going into winter, then you combine that together with the cold that we experienced, or let's go back one more step. You take the lack of moisture together with the lack of snow cover, and the snow, what it does is it just insulates the soil. And what that means is then when we do get that cold weather, the frost doesn't like hit those root systems so hard. It gradually freezes the soil, it gradually freezes the roots, but it doesn't go in there and just harshly, hit them hard like that. And that's where so it was like Patty said, a kind of a 3-step problem. If any one of those, or 2 out of the 3, but when you put all 3 things together, and then we kind of ended up with a long winter, as it turns out too, because we just didn't we had, the warm weather. Well, we've had 3 or 4 days in the 80s, but for the most part, we've been dealing with 60s here. Yeah, and 50s and 40s. Yeah, even so, that makes plants, and even there's a lot of plants that just, I have a paperbark maple in my yard. I've been getting questions from, and I have a fringe tree in my yard too, and none of those had leaves on until this past week. They're all alive. They had all the buds. And even the smoke trees are one that's a little bit late. So, I forgot his name here now. Scott that sent us in the picture. I don't know that I would completely give up on it either, because maybe it's just a little slow, and or if there was some varmint damage down at the base, it just kind of impedes some of the sap flow up. But maybe eventually enough sap comes up through their, nutrients, and it starts to grow, and it'll push those buds out yet. So, if you've got a slow moving plant like that that's not leafing out, I wouldn't give up on it yet. It's still May, not May by much, but it is still May. Mm-hmm. And again, because we've had kind of a slow spring and a cooler spring, I would thin them out a little bit, nip those tips back, take out, if there's 3 branches in it on one side and 2 on the other, cut one of them out on one side and put 2 on each side rather than 3 on, thin it out, rebalance it, tip it back a little bit. And sometimes that makes a difference too, because if some of the roots were damaged by, the winter or the fall because of lack of moisture, roots will die if it's too wet or too dry, and then roots will die over winter if it's too cold or freezes them out. So again, if you've only got 2/3 of a root system, then you only can handle 2/3 of a top also. So if you trim 1/3 of it back, now you've rebalanced the root system with the top of the plant, and then it'll push out and you'll get some new leaves and it'll survive. If you if you don't trim it, now it's out of balance and you don't have enough root system to push out that new growth for spring. So in a case like Scott's, he should cut it back, thin it out a little bit, and
hope.
And then once there's no fertilizer or anything like that would really help. But at this point in time, if you can start to see some buds swelling and you start to see some signs of new growth, but he said there's still green as he uses the fingernail touch on it. If there's green there, then you could start fertilizing it soon with like a water soluble. Out at Rademann's we have Miracle Grow, or we have some Fertilome that you mix up in a 5-gallon bucket with water, put a couple scoops and then water it with that, and that'll fertilize it and water. But you got to have, it's got to almost be kick-started a little bit before that'll really do much good. And don't use, if you want to use a a good balanced fertilizer. Don't use lawn fertilizer or put anything like that, because what you need to do is strengthen that root system. It doesn't need new growth on the top. If you have a strong root system, you'll get the new growth on the top. So anything else to add to that, Patty?
I would concentrate on, fertilizing the root system also.
Mm-hmm.
Even a lower nitrogen, the first number, a lower is better when you have a stressed out root system.
Right, and that's where like a 10-10-10 or 16-16-16, it's hard to find any fertilizer that has a lower first number than second or third, but a lawn fertilizer might be 30-0-0 or
way too much nitrogen.
It's way too much, 30% nitrogen.
All right, we got another call, but we do need to take a break, so I'm just going to ask the caller to hang tight, and we'll slide into our first break.
Yeah, we actually, Rademann's, of course, is open today, Saturday morning until noon. And if you want to stop on out, we're just 3 miles south of Fond du Lac. Joe sent me a text earlier. He says he's only got 1 or 2 slots left for delivery. So if you want a delivery, call out to Rademann's right now, 920-922-7612.
KFIZ News Time 8:30. You are enjoying Landscape Smart, brought to you by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company. Ron is here. Patty the Master Gardener is here. Special guest Luke is here. And we got a caller. You're here. Good morning. Thanks for waiting.
Good morning. I have a 3-foot-tall little evergreen tree, and the neighboring dogs christened it over the last year.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, that side of the tree is brown. Does that mean it's dead?
Well, those, what it is, the acid, I guess, from the urination is it pretty
Uric
much
acid.
Yeah, it basically killed off the buds on that side of the tree, so there isn't really, probably the best thing you could do is just cut out the dead, and then it'll start regrowing as best it can. It's going to take another year or so to recover from that, because it isn't just going to all come back all at once. But if you cut back that brown back to either any other green right behind it, or if there's even like the twigs right behind the green, it'll push out more new growth again. And of course, any sign of green will be better than the sign of brown. So I would just go ahead and, take your pruning shears. Hand shears would be preferable, because you can just kind of go in there and dig out, clean out, cut off whatever's brown in there. Anything else to add, Patty?
Well, I would also suggest that going into winter, an evergreen should be watered quite a bit to make sure that it goes into winter well hydrated. So that could have been part of the reason that it got damaged too,
Well, and that's a good point, Patty, because plants are damaged less if they're in good health too. So, now in this case, I don't know that it would make a lot of difference. The damage wasn't really lack of, but it will, recover faster. And this year now, just kind of be alert to it too, and go ahead and, water it as it needs it. And you could fertilize it to kickstart some new growth in there too. And for the most part, your evergreens, arborvitaes, cedars, which is, I'm assuming that's what this is, again, a good balanced fertilizer. Out at Rademann's, we have NutriPack packets in like 16-16-16, or otherwise like the Fertilome that you'd mix up again mix it with water and pour it around it. That would encourage some more new growth to help that fill back in.
Okay, that's what I will do then. And I know this one stem looks all the way back to the stem of the tree, so I'll have to really cut that one back.
Well, and you could take that out completely.
Would it shoot out again
No.
where I cut it off?
No, they don't. They don't do that. Once you take it out, it's
It's gone.
the branches around it have to fill in.
Okay.
Yeah, and you could,
Very good.
you could kind of cheat a little bit too. A lot of times, what we'll do is take like some baling twine or sisal and make some loops and kind of pull a branch from left to right and from right to left and kind of get that to fill in.
Fill in.
And it's actually amazing, within usually by about the end of July, middle of August, it's amazing how well it'll fill in together. So you just make loops. Don't tie it tight because it could choke off that branch, but make like a loop and put 2 loops together, and then pull left and pull right from the branches that are around it.
Okay. That sounds like a very good idea.
Yeah.
So
Because I don't like that hollow spot, but if it is, it is. It's going to be bad looking now already. So, okay,
But it'll
thank
recover.
you so much for your help.
Yep, great question. Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks for the call. We appreciate that. Lines are open, 923-1450, 1-888-900-1450. If you're bashful, the email address, kfizstudio@gmail.com, and we will quote you. So keep it clean.
A couple other things to chit-chat with while we're here in between calls. Of course, we're on YouTube and on KFIZ On Demand, so if you're tuning in late and you missed the first half hour of today's show, you can go on.
Very inspiring, by the way.
You can go on and just search Landscape Smart and then 25 and whatever episode today's is. I don't know what number it is, but...
Well, 531.
Yeah, it's one of them. It's the last episode in May. So, but anyway, it's you can search Landscape Smart or go on KFIZ On Demand also, and catch back up on today's what you missed. And the other thing I was going to bring up is I do have a couple of dinner, sandwich, whichever you prefer, Walleye Weekend tickets to give away.
And the last pair, because Walleye Weekend's next weekend.
Because Walleye Weekend starts, it starts in earnest for us because come Friday we start setting up for the big fish fry, walleye fry out there at Lakeside Park. And of course then Friday mid-afternoon we start serving walleye, and we serve it Friday night and of course Saturday and Sunday too. Now, one other thing too is we don't do dinners anymore on Sundays. So if you like the potato salad, you like the sit-down dinner, make sure you come Friday night or Saturday. Now, we will have the walleye sandwiches available on Sunday, but not the dinners. So if you want the sit-down dinner,
Shop early.
yeah, come Friday night or Saturday, not Sunday. So looks like we're going to have great weather. It's forecasted to be, mid 70s, which is
Perfect.
actually ideal. We don't really want 85 or 88 and then potential for bad storms.
Not quite as good for the beer sales, but
And we don't really want 50s either and blowing in off the lake.
yeah.
So it sounds like it's going to be a perfect weekend. We'll see as we get a little closer. But anyway, we do have a couple of free dinner tickets to somebody that calls in. So,
All right. Speaking of calling in, good morning. You're on the air.
Yes, I would like to know what kind of spray do you use on quackgrass that's on around my asparagus? And also, I need to know what's good fertilizer to use to make your the asparagus grow better.
well, you're kind of at the wrong season now for fertilizing asparagus and or even spraying any herbicides. So you almost have to just live with what you've got for right now. The only fertilizer that you could really use right now at this time of year would be, again, that the fertilome that you would mix with water, water soluble, mix it up in a 5-gallon bucket, put a couple of scoops in and water it, and water your asparagus that way. But the bad part with that is it's going to make that quackgrass grow just as much as the asparagus. So I don't know if you'd really be doing yourself any good or not.
But what would be good to use like next year, and what time of the year is the best to put it on?
Well, I like to put a thick layer of composted manure on it in every fall, and then it percolates down and works all through the winter to fertilize it.
Well,
Okay.
and by adding, with a lot of plants, almost most plants, you start filling in on top of their root systems, you do them more harm than good. But asparagus is one of those where you can just kind of keep piling it on.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you put a layer of composted manure or bark mulch or anything like that over the top, it just helps it. And as it breaks down over the course of the winter and next year, you'll get better and better, thicker stems of asparagus. The best time to spray quackgrass in asparagus is early mid-September. The asparagus is still going to be green yet, but what I like to do at that time of year is go ahead and spray it with cleanup. That's a grass killer, and if you spray it, and then even if you get some on the green stems of the asparagus, that's okay. Once you finish spraying it, then just cut off the stems, and of course it can't translocate down through the stems into the root system if the stems are cut off. So what you don't want to do is cut the asparagus off fresh, at least, and then spray cleanup on it, because then it could work its way through into the root system. But if you spray it and then cut the stems off, then any spray that you got on the stems will be, won't affect the plant. So that's not until about the middle of September. Yeah. And we'll be talking about it again in the middle of September.
We will, or sooner.
And then, Patty, when you put your compost on, you kind of wait a little bit later than that.
Yeah, a little bit. I wait until it's actually turned yellow,
Mm-hmm.
if I haven't cut it, and then I layer the compost, and I cover my rhubarb too, because it likes the same thing.
Oh, rhubarb I don't have a problem with. That comes up as much as it wants, and I just cut between the heads. But asparagus, we can't get the quackgrass to get rid of.
Yeah.
It just keeps coming.
Well, and that sucks the nutrients. Quackgrass is a deep-rooted grass too, so it's down there in the same root system, and that's where if you can kill those deep roots off of the quackgrass, then you're solving two problems. You'll get stronger asparagus because you have less competition from the grass.
Okay.
So thanks for the call.
All right, appreciate that. We got another caller here, but again, we do need to take a break, and we also have an email, so we've got all kinds of business coming up.
All right. Well, we'd like to be busy. So Rademann's, again, open today until noon, Monday through Friday till 4:30. Stop on out, and Joe's going to help you build a wall, short or tall. Luke will talk a little bit more about that if we get a chance after the break. Again, Rademann's open till noon today, 920-922-7612. For as long as there has been black dirt in Fond du Lac, Rademann's has been...
KFIZ News Time, 8:45. We are back. Landscape Smart, brought to you by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company. We have a caller on hold, and let's hit the phones. Good morning. Thanks for waiting.
Good morning. How are you today?
We're all present and semi-unaccountable.
You got that right. We have hibiscus bush that we planted that has just taken off like gangbusters. Okay, been in about 3 years, and it's
Yeah.
about 5 feet tall and 4 feet wide. And every fall it has about 1,000 blossoms.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's really, I love it, but I didn't trim it last year. And
Well, it's
still
fine.
expensive.
You can trim it. This is a good time to trim it. And you can take it back a third, but if you take it back, look for an outward facing bud so you don't get inner crisscross branches. It makes a better shape if you go down to an outward facing bud. And
Okay.
you can take a third of it back.
Yeah,
Don't so much cut the tips back, though. Thin it out a little bit more.
Sure.
Because those new shoots that are starting to come, that's where your flowers are going to form. So
Correct.
if you would shear it back with Rosa Sharon or hibiscus, they'll regrow and you'll still get some more flowers. I think it's early enough in the season, but if you shear it off completely, then I think you'd kind of impede some of that new growth and because it would have to start regrowing and then start setting up new buds. So I would be more inclined to thin it out. Hibiscus, and Rosa Sharon, they can have a tendency to self-prune a little bit too. Every once in a while we'll get a tough winter and you'll get some dieback, and pretty soon, when you look online, it'll say they get 8 feet tall. Well, they don't get 8 feet tall
Not in Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin, because we get once every 3 years or once every 5 years, the weather forces them to restart and regrow. So you'll seldom see one that big in Fond du Lac or in Wisconsin.
Okay. Yeah, I've gone in way down at the base where the dead ones, like you say, I often just clean that stuff out of there. But it's getting to be huge. I wanted to make it a little smaller, but I love all the blossoms. It's just so neat in fall.
Well, and you could come next spring. It's almost a little late right now. Next spring, if you could go in there already in, I would say more like early May, and do a little thinning out and cut out some of those bigger, thicker stems too. But you want to make sure that you can see some bud development and some new potential growth coming on, because if you'd end up with some winter damage, if you trim it in the fall or you trim it too early in the spring, you could end up cutting out the live branches and not the dead ones. So I would always wait until early, or every year is a little bit different, but early part of May before I would do any trimming on Rosa Sharon or these varieties of hibiscus.
Okay. That's kind of like my aunt told me years ago. When you're trimming your rose bush in spring, only trim back to the green.
Right.
Yes,
Mhm.
that's for sure.
So.
Okay, well, thank you. Have a good day.
All righty. Appreciate the call, 923-1450. We got another caller, and then we'll take a break.
Let's take the caller here quick first, Jerry. If
We're going to do that. Good morning.
Okay.
You're on the air.
Hi, I was calling about those fish fry tickets.
Oh.
Well, you have to have a question that's very pertinent. Then he determines.
Okay, my question is on that quack grass in the asparagus bed. Can you mow that down now, or would that help prevent the volume of it?
Yeah, actually, and we'll give you the fish tickets. That's a good point to add to our discussion on that. It definitely wouldn't hurt to mow it or to weed eat it off and get it to, because otherwise it's just continuing to grow. Yeah, and the other I'll add to that too is if you mow it or string trim it, weed eat it, whatever you want to call it. If you do that like around the 1st of September, then you let it grow out, and then you'll get better kill with the quack grass in when you spray it towards the in the middle of September. So you could, yes, definitely go ahead and trim it off, mow it off, cut it off right now and again. But then the key again would be to do it again in around the 1st of September. So
before you use the cleanup, which I do have.
Yep, and then
Right.
use the cleanup at that time of year in the middle of September. And so
Okay.
hang on the line. Jerry's going to get your information.
All right, you hang tight, okay?
Thank you. Yes.
So again, Rademann's open till noon today. I think you can still get a delivery. Give Joe a call and see if you can talk a truck driver into working a little bit later today. 920-922-7612 or stop on out. We're just 3 miles south of Fond du Lac and then turn east on County B and we're down about a quarter mile.
It's a news time 8:54. We are back and we have a caller waiting and we still have an email to answer. So let's get the caller quickly. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning. I just have a question about some tomato plants that I purchased at the fairgrounds a couple weeks ago. They did not plant them right away because of the weather.
Exactly.
They were put into the ground on Tuesday, and they are so tall and spindly, some of them. What would be the best way to handle that?
Well, if you already planted them, you could dig them up and kind of make a furrow planting instead and kind of lay them down so that long stem can all produce roots. It'll turn back upwards. Just kind of slant them at an angle.
Plant them at like a 45-degree angle kind of, Patty?
Yeah. And the reason for that is because if it's already 2 feet tall, you're not gonna dig a hole 2 feet deep. It's much better to plant them at an angle.
But like cutting off the top would not be best.
No, don't do that.
That's where it's green and growing up there. So if you cut that off, then you're gonna have all the stem, but not the.
And it'll just produce all kinds of side shoots, and they don't produce well. They'll produce, but they won't produce as good as you leave the top.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your help.
All right, thank you for the call. Let's get to this email from Melissa. She's got actually a couple of questions. The first one, now that the blossoms have dropped, what spray is recommended to prevent problems with fruit trees?
Well, like out at Rademann's, we've actually got a couple of different, we'll call them 3-in-1 sprays that work great on fruit trees, apple trees, and for that matter, flowering crab apples or anything like that too, because there's a insecticide, miticide, fungicide all together in one. And of course, my favorite one are the easiest ones to use, and the easiest ones for me to use are the ones that hook up on the end of a garden hose, and then you just walk out there and turn the water on and then trigger spray the tree, and you should be getting started with that real soon right now. And you're going to have to, for best results, probably spray about 3 times about every 10 days. So if it's May 31st and then again on June 10th and June 20th and June 30th, and you can vary that by a day or two one way or the other depending on conditions. You don't want to be spraying if it's 88 degrees like it might be on Tuesday.
Or impending rain.
Or a real windy day, of course.
Yeah.
So, don't look at your 10-day as being, pick the best day in and around 10 days, not exactly on the 10th. If it works out that way, that's great.
Yeah.
But so,
All righty, Melissa, second question. What is better to prevent weeds on strawberries, mulch or hay? And then when should this be removed to prevent excessive moisture and green growing yuck from growing on the top of the soil? That's a quote.
Oh, well, if they're called strawberries because it's recommended to use straw. So, I don't.
straw is a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
It's a little airier, where hay would be kind of denser and coarser.
And that's would cause yuck because that would get moldy and the moisture would make it all get moldy and fungus and stuff growing in there. So just weed it if it's got weeds, and then place straw around the plants.
You can't, there isn't really an herbicide
No.
that you could spray that would kill weeds and not affect the strawberries. So you'd have to be, you can't really, other than pulling them at this point in time, that's the only, because strawberry is, you know, a broad-leafed,
Yes.
good weed, let's just call it, and you aren't going to be able to spray anything on there that would help you that way. So
Okay.
All righty. Hope that helps you out, Melissa. Lines are open, and time is running out. Matter of fact, lines aren't open anymore because it's 8:59.
so yeah, so I guess we'll have to call. Special thanks again for Luke sitting in. Got a word or two?
Not really.
A man of few words.
I think you said it all. I was just kind of intrigued by all the questions.
Yeah, so anyway, again, special thanks to Luke Roffers from Roffers Landscaping for joining us today. And again, Rademann's open till noon today, 3 miles south of Fond du Lac, exit off on County B to the east, just down the road there about a quarter mile. Or give them a call yet, 920-922-7612.
All righty. Our thanks to Master Gardener Patty. Ron Rademann, thank you. Luke, thanks for dropping by, and I know we'll see you again in the near future. Thank you so much for the calls and the emails.